friends, people I never knew, people I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, front of acres with a mansion on my land. Pulls jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This zone so fast. Ain't got your ladies and Primetime is on.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of primetime.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright. Yeah.
Welcome into another Primetime Fantasy Football here on Next Level Radio. I am your host, Adam Gorey, joined as always by my co-host, Steve Richards.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me as always.
Yes, thanks for joining me as always. So last week we brought you through the AFC East, and this week we're going to bring you the AFC South spotlight. If you missed last week's episode, we are officially on iTunes. We have our own page, so just go ahead and go to iTunes and give a search for Primetime Fantasy Football, and you'll find us. But yeah, make sure you listen to that. We did what we call Sleeper Spotlight. We did the Over-Under. And then we also did Bull or Bear last week. We're not doing Bull or Bear this week. Number one, I think it confuses people, including ourselves.
Yep.
And then number two, it's really not something we need to do every week, to be honest. Because, draft stock is something that does change weekly, but usually not enough guys. So we actually have a different segment this week called Dig It or Ditch It, which is basically like a buy or sell. But Steve and I both hate to use what everybody else uses, which everybody else uses buy or sell. So we'll tell you if we dig it or if we're going to ditch it.
We do stand out from the crowd. So.
Steve, I know you had mentioned you wanted to promote something real quick, right?
Did I? I mean, my blog is, of course, always available.
Oh, yeah. I think it was just the fact that you had kind of sort of picked Argentina, who just made its way into the finals.
Yeah, with an Argentina victory for all of you World Cup fans out there, you can check out my blog where I compared the NBA to the World Cup. I did a little bit of a preview, and my prediction was Brazil-Argentina for a final. That didn't go well for half of it. But,
you're close.
But I had it was close.
You're only 6 goals away.
Yeah. But I had Argentina. And had them compared to the Heat as the sexy pick to win. A lot of fun guys, a lot of star power to watch. Compared Messi to LeBron a little bit, so it was kind of spot on in that sense. So go ahead and head over to the blog and check it out. I'm also going to start putting up the our podcast episodes up on my blog as well. So
cool.
Yeah. Listen to the episodes. Not only can you check it out on iTunes and Next Level Radio, but you can also check it out on my blog starting out in a couple of days too.
And I know actually your blog is linked to your page on the Next Level Radio site. So if you go to nextlevelradioonline.com, if you go to On Air Staff, I think it's called, click Steve and click Steve's blog, it'll takes you a direct link to Steve's actual blog. So you can do it that way too.
Trick.
It is a nifty trick. The internet, the power of the internet. But yeah, so if you haven't already, send us an email with your information and you can do our Primetime Fantasy Football League, Fantasy Football League. It's going to be done through, I believe, Yahoo, but all you have to do is email primetime at nextlevelradioonline.com and we will send you the invite. You can also send us your questions or just topics you want to hear us talk about or, suggestions for the show, anything like that. And, but yeah, I know we had mentioned to each other that, even if people are in keeper leagues and stuff like that, like right now, not a lot of people have questions because, they're just doing research at this point. They're not drafting yet. But some people are in keeper leagues and they have to decide who they're going to keep, whether it's, they just keep them without losing any draft picks or, certain guys lose you certain number of draft picks, if you keep them. If you have a question, if you're not sure who to keep, send it to us. We'll help you out. Maybe we'll agree on it, maybe we'll disagree and not help you at all, but there's always that chance that one of us will sway you.
Yeah, exactly. And they've made fantasy football a full-time, year-round job, so there's always stuff to do in the off-season and questions to have, so.
Yeah,
I'm more than happy to answer any of those.
I'd like to point out, Steve last year in our league is my vote for comeback player of the year for sure.
I appreciate that.
And I won 2 out of 3 leagues I was in last year. Of course, the 2 that I won were not for money, and the one that I didn't win was for money. But we'll leave that out. So
Yeah.
I guess let's get on with the show. I guess we should start off with the sleeper spotlight. Take it away, Robot Bill.
Yes.
Primetime Fantasy Football's Sleeper Spotlight.
All right, and I guess, like we said before, we're highlighting the AFC South this week. So you got the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans, and Jacksonville Jaguars. Steve, why don't you kick us off? I know you had quite a few possible sleepers, and again, these not necessarily guys, that we think you should reach on per se. Some of them, you probably are going to want to reach on, but most of them are just where they're going right now. Their ADP, their average draft position. We think you have the great opportunity to get a decent steal and a lot of upside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start with the quarterback position. And ADP doesn't get much lower than undrafted. And in this division, it's a lot of Andrew Luck and then 3 other guys. But as far as a possible sleeper goes, I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Ryan Fitzpatrick. I realize that Case Keenum is behind him, and he might be the younger guy looking forward to it. And Case Keenum kind of falls in the same category because the reasoning for it is Bradley, my guy from Penn State, moving up to the Houston Texans, and anytime you got Andre Johnson on the outside, he's going to boost your numbers. So I certainly wouldn't mind having as a number 2, maybe even taking a flyer on, because again, both these guys went undrafted, so very late you could be able to take them, and I think that they have a chance to improve numbers anytime the guy that mentors and coaches up Tom Brady gets a head coaching gig. It's a good sign for your quarterback. So I think there's a chance that you see a spike there in statistics.
Yeah, and I had actually heard even that Case Keenum was kind of on the bubble on making the team, but I know a lot of Houston fans, really support him and stuff like that. So I think he will be okay in that aspect. And after that, it's all training camp. I mean, if he impresses in training camp, he could easily take over for Ryan Fitzpatrick after a few games. I mean, Bill O'Brien is not tied down to anybody right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, once the draft gets closer, the picture should get clearer on who the quarterback's going to be. And I should have said just Houston quarterback as a possible sleeper.
Yeah.
But right now it's Fitzpatrick. So.
Yeah. At the moment he is named the starter, but that could always change.
Absolutely.
I guess like I said, I only had a few. One, I guess it was sticking to quarterback. You could go Blake Bortles, maybe. I know Chad Henne's the starter. I don't know that I'd use a pick on Chad Henne. Maybe if you're in a dynasty league or a keeper league where you lose the draft pick you draft the person at, maybe take a flyer on Blake Bortles way late because he might not start this year at all. He might start half the year, but I can pretty much tell you he should be starting next year at least. So, especially dynasty league guys, definitely someone to keep an eye on and could end up being a steal this year. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons why you could take Blake Bortles is why I would go into my sleeper spotlight. The 2 guys that Jacksonville drafted this year, Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson, are a couple guys on my sleeper spotlight. Again, undrafted guys, guys that you might even be able to pick up on the waiver wire, but definitely you could take a flyer on late in the draft. Jacksonville's kind of in keeper league mode in the real world.
Yeah, they're dynasty in it.
Yeah, they got all sorts of young talent, and we talked about this a little bit in our very first episode, but I like Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson both a lot, and they're going to have a lot of opportunity to learn and grow and play.
If you had to pick one, who would you go with between those 2 guys?
Well, we could start calling this the Penn State Bias Show, but I like Allen Robinson a lot. He's got good size. He's got really good hands. He was an absolute game breaker in college, which means absolutely nothing in the NFL. But he was really exciting to watch, and I'm excited to see him grow and learn and take it to the next level because I think his the talents that he does have can really translate well to the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of talented wide receivers, my next sleeper would be DeAndre Hopkins, who had a very good rookie season. Not, fantastic, but he did stick out a lot, made some fantastic catches, especially because the Houston Texans have never really been able to find that guy to line up opposite Andre Johnson and really stick out. I mean, Kevin Walters did pretty well when he was on the team, but no one really put up huge numbers because Andre Johnson was the one putting up the numbers. But DeAndre Hopkins has that, star quality, and as Andre Johnson gets older, DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is really going to slide into that starting star receiver role in Houston, and his ADP right now is 129. So even in redraft leagues, I would definitely keep an eye out for him to be sticking around late in the draft. And in keeper and dynasty leagues, I would definitely look at him, drafting him, because he could be a guy, you get in the late rounds, he could be a guy that you're keeping every year for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you talked about they had trouble lining up a guy opposite Andre Johnson, but that position is obviously wide open because Andre Johnson's going to draw a lot of attention. So the guy opposite should certainly get a lot of opportunities and have plenty of opportunity to catch some passes.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick in. We'll stick with the wide receivers. I'm going to go with the Colts and Hakeem Nicks, whose ADP right now is down at 115, which is a little bit in the later rounds, the mid to late rounds in standard leagues. He's 11th round in the 10-team league, and I just think that they have T.Y. Hilton. He's more of a slot guy. He's got good speed, but I like Hakeem Nicks as far as the possession goes. Not 100% sure on Reggie Wayne's durability / he's been durable in the past, but he's also shown some signs of injury. So I think Hakeem Nicks coming in from the Giants really has some potential to step into a role and catch a lot of passes. Yeah,
for me personally, I'm not a huge Hakeem Nicks fan. I don't know if it's because he was on the Giants or what, but even last year, he had a poor year last year. He's still pretty young. He's only, I think, 26 or 27. He did not have a great year last year. He actually played in 15 of 16 games. Maybe he didn't play the whole game, but he only ended up putting up 89 points, and we'll get to it in over-under. He didn't have a single touchdown last year. So, Eli Manning had an off year as well, and that kind of, trickled down or maybe even trickled up. I'm not sure who affected who more, but he could easily have a bounce back year. So, it's a guy that I'm a little weary of, but I could see him being a steal, at least going, ADP at 115. He could definitely be a guy that maybe is a wide receiver 3 or 4 even.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess you also had Reggie Wayne on your sleeper spotlight, right, for the Colts?
Yeah, go ahead. If you have
I was going to let you take over because I'm also cautious of Reggie Wayne, as you know.
Yeah, it's true. He's a bit of an injury-prone guy, but he's also a bona fide number one. If not, the reason that I have him as a possible sleeper spotlight is the ADP. He's at 88, which I just think he's better than 8th round. If he is back to being Reggie Wayne and the Reggie Wayne that he can be. So I think that that's more on his average draft position rather than him being a sleeper. Obviously, the name Reggie Wayne doesn't spark the word sleeper, but
right, yeah. And for me, actually, like if I were drafting and he were there in the 7th or 8th round, that's right about where I would want him. That's just me personally, but I'm just weary of him, cautious with him. That's not to say, like you've mentioned this before, he's made great strides as far as coming back from injuries and stuff like that, and he seems to be an ageless wonder, but he is quite a ways out from his injury. It did happen about halfway through last season, so it's not like it was the end of the year and he's still recovering. He's already running and everything like that when they were doing OTAs. So he was a guy who surprised me like 2 years ago. I didn't think much of him, and he had a fantastic year and ended up being a steal for people. So shows what I know.
No, you only host a podcast about it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Maybe we should have him on. I guess we should move on to running backs. For me, Toby Gerhart definitely could be a sleeper, and we've been kind of talking him up a little bit on this show. His ADP right now is 86, which if you're in a 12-team league is the somewhere in the 7th round. If you're in a 10-team, that's in the 8th round. Getting a starting running back in the National Football League who you know they're going to give the ball. Now, I know it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. We all know they're and I apologize to any Jaguars fans. They're terrible. But, MJD still found a way. Now, last year, not as much. And I think the year before he was injured. But even on, when you're getting the rock and there's nobody else taking the rock from you and you're a hard runner like Toby Gerhart, I think he had last year he might have had, or at least when he started or played, he had the highest average yards per carry after contact. So
I think I saw that too.
Yeah, when you got a guy like that running downhill on a team that's not good and they have a young core and they're going to need to establish a run to get anything going, I think getting him in the 7th or 8th round is definitely super. I'd actually probably look at taking him in the 5th or 6th if he's there. If he's there and I don't really like many of the running backs in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We've talked about Toby Gerhart a bit. He's definitely on the rise, and we're both excited to see what he can do as the lead back. And again, that's another one where it's more of his ADP than the sleeper. And being ADP 86, I think that's definitely low, and definitely if you get him at 86, you could consider yourself lucky and consider him a sleeper, I would think.
Yeah, I do think you'll probably see that creep up a little bit as maybe the next month or so goes by. But I mean, if you're drafting soon, and you're seeing him go in the 7th or 8th round, take him.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another guy that's going undrafted right now, and the reason that I have this guy is because of the running back in front of him, who is Arian Foster. That's Andre Brown. Who is currently going undrafted. Arian Foster, he's always concerned me with the injury stuff. I know he doesn't concern other people as much as it does me, but he's getting into the running back dog years age, which is incredible to think because he hasn't been around for too long. But at the same time, Andre Brown's a little bit fresher. He's young and he's probably hungry from coming over from the Giants. So I would be excited to see what chance Andre Brown would take if he got it, and I think it would be inevitable that he gets a chance with Arian Foster in front of him.
Yeah, it really surprises me he's going undrafted in most leagues, especially knowing Arian Foster's injury issues and having to handcuff him to Ben Tate. Why wouldn't you think the same way with Andre Brown? I think Andre Brown is just as good of a runner as Ben Tate is.
Yeah, I agree. I was just about to bring up that point as well. I was just thinking that he's one of the better handcuff options for me as well. And even if you don't own Arian Foster as a handcuff option, he's still a solid pick for me.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't own Arian Foster and you get Andre Brown, I can almost guarantee you at some point in the season, the Arian Foster owner is going to try and offer you a trade for Andre Brown.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's prime trade bait.
Yeah. So next up, Bishop Sankey for the Titans. And I'm saying him because, Chris Johnson's gone. They have Sean Green, but you never know with teams these days. A lot of teams are very willing to give a rookie running back a chance. And if this guy, does well in preseason, I can very easily see him getting many of the carries. Maybe not all of them. They might still split, but I could definitely see him getting most of the carries for the Titans, and his ADP right now is 75. So in 10-team leagues, that's the 7th round. I think that's about right where I would take him, maybe in the 7th round. If he slips to the 8th, that too, or even the 6th, depending where Sean Green goes. But he's a guy I would take a chance on if he's there in the rounds he's going in. That's definitely a guy that you might end up paying dividends later on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of excitement and hype around the way he runs, too. And Sean Green's never really impressed anybody. He's just kind of fallen into roles. He had one good year, I think, and then he hasn't really done much since then. He's just kind of fallen into starting running back roles. So it's certainly the position is open, and if he impresses in camp and things like that, he could definitely be somebody that you can take and run with and have as a really solid flex option. Maybe
no pun intended.
Yeah. No pun intended. I'm going to jump down to a tight end position.
All right.
And I am going to tout Kobe Fleener, who is right now ADP 135. Tight ends don't tend to go really high, obviously. We talked about this last week, unless their name's Jimmy Graham or somebody of that caliber. But
right, and like we said, I mean, not necessarily guys that we're telling you to take earlier than their ADP, but if they're still right around that ADP, these are guys that we would probably take over maybe somebody else around that draft position.
Exactly, getting the best value
exactly.
for your money at this position. In the 13th round, I think Kobe Fleener, he could possibly even be a starting tight end for you, and getting a starting tight end in the 13th round isn't too bad of a spot at all. And I think he could be a high-end starting tight end. I like the way that he plays. He's one of the pass-catching tight ends as opposed to one of the blocking tight ends. And
yeah.
Andrew Luck seems to favor him a little bit. I think they're around the same age, if not came out at the same time, and he looks for him as a solid safety blanket type option, which is always good to have in your tight end. And when you can count on things from your tight end, you're at a good start on your team.
Yeah, and sticking with Colts tight ends, actually one of mine is Dwayne Allen. I know he had hip surgery. I don't remember if it was the off season or not. I guess it was last season he had it. He participated in OTAs. He's a solid. He's young too. He's only 24 years old, and in a Colts offense, I could easily see them using both tight ends many different ways. He's also ADP 137. But I mean, he played in one game I think last year and had a touchdown. So I mean, hey, can't argue with averages.
Yeah,
Law of averages is telling me this year he's going to get 16 touchdowns. So, yeah, 16 touchdown tight end at 137 ADP. That's a steal.
That's a steal. Sleeper spotlight. I'll close it out with Delaney Walker, who is right around. All these guys are pretty much around the same spot.
Yeah.
Delaney Walker's at 134, and I'm kind of saying this just because I don't truly believe in any of the Titan receiving core, and I just kind of like Delaney Walker.
Can't argue with that.
To fill in a role that's. People talk about Kendall Wright like he's a top-end wide receiver, and I just don't see him as that.
Yeah.
They picked up Dexter McCluster, but I don't see that either. And I just think Delaney Walker is a solid option and somebody that you can get in the later rounds, but somebody that'll catch passes and catch touchdowns and find his way to being productive.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I mean, he never quite. I mean, he didn't really produce a crazy amount in San Francisco. He surprised in San Francisco, and I think a lot of people had high expectations of him last year, and I think they will kind of level out this year, and I think that's going to help him a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. That's absolutely 100% true.
All right, let's move on.
It's time for Over Under.
All right, and over-under this week, again, sticking with the AFC South, we'll start out with quarterbacks. Andrew Luck last year had roughly 297 fantasy points. These are standard league scoring, no PPR or anything like that, so you would have to readjust. Yeah, I guess I should have put receptions in here for the receivers. I'll look it up while we're doing it. So Andrew Luck had 297 fantasy points, just over 3,800 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 picks, only 9 picks. That's really good. 377 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, a few 2-point conversions, and a couple fumbles. I'm inclined to say, I think over, because I think he's just going to keep getting better.
That's impressive for you to. I mean, if you got over, you're either going with more touchdowns or you have him approaching 4,000 yards, which is quite a season for. But like you said, this is probably the toughest one in the division. I would think,
yeah, all the other quarterbacks are weak.
Yeah, I mean, just because the season was so good, but you believe in Andrew Luck. I could see over as well. Now that I said that you've been bold and have him approaching 4,000 passing yards, but I'm going to go more with the touchdowns, and more specifically the rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, he's a rusher,
4
man.
rushing touchdowns. Yeah, people don't realize it, but he can run the football, and he 4 rushing touchdowns is a bit of a low number for a rushing quarterback of his caliber. So I'll go over as well and have him tip the 300-point scale, which is obviously a solid quarterback and somebody you want to look at early in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, looking at last year's stats, he was the 4th highest scoring fantasy quarterback.
Yeah,
Cam Newton, Drew Brees. Yeah, Cam Newton, Drew Brees, and Peyton above him. So Peyton had over 400 points. Drew Brees 350 just about, and Cam just got over 300. So I definitely think he'll match it, and I think he can outscore himself by maybe a point per game or something like that.
Yeah, and he's. I mean, now that you're saying that, he's on the same caliber as Cam Newton. So
yeah, and
he see him.
He did pass for over 4,000 yards his rookie season, so it's not out of the question that he can get more yards. And it seems like he actually had the same number of passing touchdowns and cut his interceptions in half.
Yeah, so he boosted his numbers with the touchdowns, which you like to see with the quarterback maturing and getting even better. So, like you mentioned, he just seems like he's going to keep getting better and maybe even become a fantasy juggernaut type moving forward.
Future stud right there, yeah. So next up we have Jake Locker. Only played 7 games last year. 103 fantasy points, which comes out to 14.8 roughly per game. 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks, 155 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a fumble lost. So, I mean, obviously you got to think he's going to go over the total. But if you're looking at 14.82 a game, you think he's going to do better than that?
Not particularly. I don't believe in the Titans all that much. Again, people talk about Kendall Wright like he's great, and I just don't see that. And we were just talking about Bishop Sankey, who is a running back, and he won't help Ryan Fitzpatrick's numbers, or Jake Locker's numbers. So obviously,
he won't help Ryan Fitzpatrick's numbers either.
That's a good point. So over 103, but not. I don't think he's a 15-point per game quarterback. I'm gonna agree with that too. Over the 103, but under the 15.
Next, you have Ryan Fitzpatrick on the Houston Texans. Only played 11 games last year. Totaled 178 points, which works out to an average of 16.2 per game. 2,400 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 12 picks, 225 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and a couple lost fumbles.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go over on both 178 and 16. I just talked about him in the sleeper profile.
Right.
I believe in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I believe in the system that he's moving into. I also think his ratio is better than 14 touchdowns to 12 picks. I think he's a little bit better of a quarterback than that. The famous Harvard grad, he's smarter than that, and he can read the defense better than that. So I'm going to go over on both of those numbers and hope that Ryan Fitzpatrick has a solid quarterback number 2 season.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go over on the 178, obviously. 16.24 per game is probably right about where I see him, but I think I'll take a little bit over because he improved which team he was on. And assuming obviously, and probably for you as well, that he remains the starting quarterback.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so I do think if he remains a starting quarterback for the season, I think he can get up to that 17 point per game mark, maybe even 18. I don't think he's going to get near 20, but I definitely think he can average out around 16 or 17 points per game and be a solid QB2. Case Keenum, his backup, or presumably his backup, 8 games last year, 109 fantasy points, 13.7 per game. 1,700 passing yards, 9 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 72 rushing yards with a touchdown and 2 lost fumbles.
Yeah, I mean, if you pick one, you can't pick the other. So I'm going to go under on both on here. And my reasoning is kind of because of real life football rather than fantasy football. I think the Texans are due for a resurgence with the addition of Clowney. If we want to talk defense, they shored up the defense, and they're a good football team, and I think I mentioned it a couple of times with their new coaching leadership in the organization that they're going to be a decent team, and for that reason I would go with Fitzpatrick, who's the veteran. They would want to lead their team rather than Keenum, who doesn't have as many games under his belt and is a little bit more inexperienced. So.
Yeah, I'm going under on both too. I just don't think he's going to see as much playing time as 8 games as he did last year.
Yeah.
Last one in the division for quarterbacks, Chad Henne, 15 games last year, only put up 171 points with 11.4 per game, 3,200 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 14 picks, and 77 rushing yards.
Yeah, these numbers are pretty dismal.
Yeah,
We're gonna be honest.
Can't get
We're gonna
much
be honest
worse.
about it. Yeah, but lower.
Wow,
I'll go under.
Can't get much worse, but yeah, he will.
I'm a big fat Blake Bortles fan.
Okay.
You could throw me all the way over that bandwagon, and for the opposite reason that I don't like Case Keenum, is the reason that I don't like Chad Henne, because I think the Jaguars are going to be in rebuild mode and young quarterback mode, which is Blake Bortles, not Chad Henne. So I don't see Chad Henne. He's maybe first on the depth chart now, but I don't see him impressing enough and keeping the job for very long.
Yeah, this is a tricky one.
Yeah. Because
you really don't know when they're going to give Bortles the baton, the torch, whatever you want to say. Man, I really think they might actually keep Bortles on the bench for most of the year and let him learn the offense. So I'm actually going to take the over. Even if he doesn't play all 15 games, I got to think he does better than 11.42 per game, with establishing a running game, maybe setting up some passes to those young receivers. So I'm going to go over, hoping that he starts a decent amount of games, enough to get him over 171 points.
Yeah, he could probably start 10 games and get over. Maybe not 10, but
11. We'll give him 11. If you give 11 games, you might be able to get up there. Moving on to wide receivers, Andre Johnson, 170 points, 1,400 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Let me look up his receptions real quick while you talk about him.
I can fill space. I'll go over without knowing his receptions. One, because we're not talking PPR league, but two, 5 touchdowns is not Andre Johnson numbers. So just by touchdowns alone, he is a 1,500 yard type receiver, but he's not a 5 touchdown type receiver, and that's in the positive. So I'll go over 170.
109 receptions.
Yeah, that's about typical for Andre Johnson as well.
Yeah.
So the first 2 numbers are, but the 5 touchdowns, I think he can do better than that.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over mainly because of the touchdowns as well. I think he can get more than that, especially with DeAndre Hopkins being in his second year and possibly taking up some more coverage away from Andre Johnson, maybe freeing him up a little bit. I'll go over as well. Next, you have T.Y. Hilton on the Indianapolis Colts, 138, almost 140. Or 139 rather, because he was 138.9 at least according to this. 1,083 yards, 5 touchdowns, and whopping 6 rushing yards.
Yeah, he would have only been at 138.3 without the 6 rushing yards. So.
Yeah, I would have rounded down instead of up.
I am gonna go
82 receptions, by the way.
Where am I gonna go? 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Give me the under, because I talked about Hakeem Nicks.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I'm talking about Hakeem Nicks and Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne only played half a year last year, so there's not as many balls out there to catch. So I'm going to go under just by sheer numbers of the thing.
Okay, I am going to take... Boy, I wish I could push it. I'm going to take the over, saying that he gets at least that many yards and maybe a couple more touchdowns thrown in there. Because I'm not. I don't know how I feel about Hakeem Nicks. He might not even play half the season, and that leaves T.Y. Hilton no. I mean, not that I think he's going to pressure him for a starting role or anything like that anyway. But so I'll take the over. A guy that Steve's not too high on, Kendall Wright, 119.9. fantasy points last year, 1,079 yards, and just 2 touchdowns. All this hype for a guy who got 2 touchdowns.
I think that's the reason that people are hyping him, is that he only got 2 touchdowns, and if he catches touchdowns, he becomes this elite fantasy wide receiver. Maybe that's just who Kendall Wright is, though. I just don't see it. I mean, he had a couple nice games last year, but I don't know that.
He did have 94 receptions.
Yeah.
So
that's a good number. Yeah, that's a good number for sure. I just, I'm not too high on any of the Titans receivers, and Kendall Wright is included into that. This is one where I would push if I could, but just because of the way that I've talked about him for the entire time, I'm going to go under because just to stick with my guns.
Boy. You know what? God, I wish I could push this one too. I guess I'll give in to temptation. I'll say over just because I gotta think he gets more than 2 touchdowns. But yeah, I'm not. I don't think he's a superstar by any means.
Yeah, I hear you. We gotta start cataloging these things.
Yeah.
See how wrong we are at the end of the year.
Or if we're right, we can say next year, like, listen to us. Look what we did. We got lucky. Cecil Shorts the third. 13 games last year. 95.7 fantasy points, which works out to 7.3 per game. 777 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, you heard me talk about Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson
right.
earlier. So I love those guys. But at the same time, Cecil Shorts is the number 1. And
he's the third.
Yeah, and he's the third, which is impressive. So I'm going to go over on the 7.3 just because the number 1 receiver should be able to get more than 7.3 points in a fantasy matchup. So.
Right, yeah, I think he's going to be the number 1 guy, and the other 2 are going to kind of battle out for the second position.
I would agree.
The guy who loses that battle will probably end up on the inside, maybe Allen Robinson. No offense. I will also take the over. I got to think he does more than 7.3 points per game.
And then I believe in him a lot more to catch more touchdowns than his 3 last year than I do with the Kendall Wright and stuff like that. So
yeah, and like we have a comment from John in the message board saying that he's underrated because he's on the Jaguars. Yeah, I'm going to agree, and that's why I think also Toby Gerhardt's still going low in drafts is because he's on the Jaguars. The Jaguars are just a hole. And not having Justin Blackmon there actually helps him, I think, because he is the number 1 guy, and they're bringing in younger guys around him rather than him having to fight for the number 2 position. With those other guys, because Blackmon probably would have been the number 1 had he not screwed up his life, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that helps all the Jacksonville receivers.
Yeah, so 66 catches, by the way, for Shorts last year.
Yeah, that'll go up too.
Yeah, I agree. Next, you have Reggie Wayne. 7 games last year, 64.8 points, 9.26 per game, 503 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 rushing yards, and 1 2-point conversion. I know where you're going.
Yeah, I'm going over, baby. Show me more Reggie Wayne. I'll go back to the comments in John where he wants to compare Nixon Wayne to Harrison Wayne, so I'm perfectly okay with that comparison, and let's get some Reggie Wayne of old so I look smart with this thing.
You know what? I'll take the over on the total number of points because I think he plays more than 7 games. As far as points per game, 9.26. Boy, I'm actually going to say a little lower. I don't know why. I just think I think that's about right for him for the season, but maybe a little bit lower. Don't ask me why.
I think we've made clear that we're sitting on opposite sides of the fence on Rich.
I can't give you analysis on that. I'm not feeling it. Next up, you have the Harrison part of that. Hakeem Nicks, apparently. 15 games, 89.6 points, 5.97 per game, 896 yards, no touchdowns.
This is a...
and by the way, John's a Colts fan, so him saying that does not necessarily help your case with Reggie Wayne.
Well, that's not fair. I take everything back.
He hates Reggie Wayne.
Awful. This is one where I want to push, but the 0 touchdowns is what entices me to go over, because I think he's capable. He's perfectly capable of being a 900-yard receiver, just because that's not that many. So he only needs one touchdown to go over. So it might not necessarily be 6 per game. He's a bit inconsistent, but I think his yearly points should certainly be higher than 89.6 if he plays 15 more games.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go under, because I think he's still going to be Hakeem Nicks. He's still going to have injury issues. He might not even play. He's probably going to be the third receiver anyway. And I think maybe he'll get a touchdown, but then get 60 less yards for the season. So that'll even it out.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll fumble it too, so then that leaves room for just 40 less yards.
Yeah.
And I have lost the respect of our commenters as well. Moving on, DeAndre Hopkins, 90 points last year, 802 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a fumble.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he can avoid the sophomore slump, we were talking about how he's opposite Andre Johnson.
Right.
That'll boost your numbers right there, and we always like guys that are moving forward, have another year under their belt, learning the system and things like that. I could go over on this one and be confident about it.
Yeah, I'm going over. I love this guy. Can't say enough good things about him. I actually had him on my team last year for a good half of the season, but I couldn't use him, and I had to actually end up dropping him. He hit a little bit of a slow spot. Someone picked him up almost right away, though. So I definitely think he gets more than 2 touchdowns, like Andre Johnson will get more than 5. And I think he can be close to a 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that being outside of his realm at all. I think we're in full agreement on this one.
Yes. Nate Washington's next. 109 points, 919 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Solid year for him last year.
Yeah, it's kind of a blah, solid, like, yeah, this is what he does, and that's kind of the player that he is. So if I was ever going to push, it would be on Nate Washington, but let's go under, because I've talked about how not impressed I am with the Titans receiving core and how impressed I am with Delaney Walker. So let's go under on Nate Washington and give Dexter McCluster some catches.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. Let's take a quick break because it's already about 40 minutes into the podcast. Let's take a really quick break. We'll come back. We'll finish up over under with running backs and tight ends. We'll get into our new segment, Dig It or Ditch It, and then we will also go over an interesting article one of the national pundits has released this year. It's called 100 Facts. You probably already know who we're talking about. And then we'll go over which of those we agree with and which of those maybe we don't agree with. So we'll be back in a second.
You're listening to Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
The Showcast.
Next on the list is The Nut Job. Voices are Will Arnett and Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is enough just to get me to rent it.
Squirrels, right?
Yeah, this is the squirrel. I would hope so with a movie called The Nut Job. Otherwise, it's a complete porn title that I'm just reviewing completely wrong.
Liam Neeson in it?
Well, you never know.
Sundays on Next Level Radio.
Hey there, this is Jimmy Simpson, star of Half the Content on Netflix, and you are listening to Next Level Radio.
Hey guys, Ben Beck here for Next Level Radio, reminding you to join me every Thursday, 7 to 10 Eastern Standard Time, for my show, All Request Radio Rock. You can join me and I'll be playing the best of new rock, old rock. Well, let's face it, if it rocks, I'm going to play it. You'll be able to make requests all throughout the night and join me in some conversation as well. So don't forget, join me every Thursday, 7 to 10 Eastern Standard Time for All Request Radio Rock, right here on Next Level Radio.
Well, all
right, we're back from that very quick break here on Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio. All right, let's get back into over-under. We have the running backs. Why don't you start us off this time, Steve?
Cool. Arian Foster is the first one on this list here. Obviously, only played 8 games last year. Went for 10.81 per game for a total of 86.5 points. 540 rush yards with only 1 touchdown. A couple receiving yards, 183 with 1 receiving touchdown as well, and cashed in on a 2-point conversion. I will go over. I mentioned that I'm not completely excited about Arian Foster, but he's better than 10 points a game. He was down last year and only scoring 2 touchdowns in 8 games. It's just not Arian Foster-like. So
yeah, to have 1 touchdown, well, technically 2, but in 8 games and still average 10 per game is pretty damn good. I'll go over as well on both, assuming he plays the whole season.
Yeah, for sure. We go Toby Gerhart next. Again, this is guys. He only scored 47 points, but he was behind Adrian Peterson. So
yeah,
he had ended up with 280 rush. Yeah, over next.
Yeah,
280 rush yards, 2 rush touchdowns. Over. Trent Richardson's next.
By 7 times that amount. No, maybe not that much, but yeah.
He will score 471 points instead of 47. Trent Richardson, the Colts lead back, is next.
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
Yeah, 563 yards with 3 touchdowns. He had 316 receiving yards with 1 touchdown. So 4 total touchdowns. He lost a fumble last year, which is always important for running backs. 103.9 total points. I would like to go over, because I think that Trent Richardson is a better running back than 563 yards for an entire season. So I think
I agree. And
this over.
This will be his first full season with the Colts, because they traded him during the year, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was. It was early, I think, in the year, but it was a mid-season trade, so he's got a whole another off-season and things with the playbook and all that sort of stuff.
As pointed out in the chat room by John again, Donald Brown is gone. They do have Ahmad Bradshaw. I'm not sure how much he'll cut into carries, but I do think Trent Richardson will be over as well. I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Sean Green played 11 games and averaged 5.2 points per game for a total of 57.4. He went for almost 300 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns to go along with 39 receiving yards. He just doesn't impress me at all. So I'm going to go under, because I'm just not. He doesn't excite me. Nothing about him excites me. So I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go under because I think Bishop Sankey will end up eventually moving in, taking most, if not all, the carries.
Exactly, and we can't do an over-under on him because a rookie, but...
0, over.
Over. And I would get...
Toby Gerhart, over.
Before you rudely interrupted me was... I think he will go way over 5.2 as well, so... Bishop Sankey is just like a measuring stick type point. He's a better running back than Sean Green is.
Agreed.
Andre Brown's the next guy. In 8 games, he averaged 9.19 points per game.
Yeah, give me the under.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about Arian Foster. So if Arian Foster, stays mostly healthy, Andre Brown's not going to cut into his carries.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically, if Andre Brown or if Arian Foster is hurt for half the season, then okay, maybe Andre Brown goes over that number. But otherwise, I think he goes under 9 per game for sure.
Yeah, that would be tough. I mean, I definitely like him as somebody who, as we talked about the handcuff option.
He has good personality.
Yeah, he's a great personality, great guy. But yeah, if he gets the opportunity, I think he can shine. But it's just if he gets the opportunity, so that's a tough one. And then finally is Ahmad Bradshaw, who averaged 11.6 per game, and it was only in 3 games. He produced well when he was in, but he didn't play that often, obviously. And I would go under on 11 because we just talked about Trent Richardson, and so.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, cool. And then we'll move over to tight ends, and we can just go real quick through these as we're running short on our time. But Delaney Walker.
A couple more segments.
Yeah, Delaney Walker went for 6.21 per game. I'll go over on that one.
Yeah, I'll go over.
Yeah, Garrett Graham went 13 games for 6.35 per game. That's pretty standard tight end scoring for the Texans guy.
I'll go over on him too.
I'll go over as well.
Yeah, with Owen Daniels gone, he's the number 1 guy now.
Yeah, I keep going back to my boy from Penn State, so he loves him some tight ends. So I'll go over on Garrett Graham as well.
And in the football aspect, he loves him some tight ends.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
We don't need any more rumors about Penn State floating around there.
I didn't. Don't quote me.
Taken out of context.
Kobe Fleener went for 88 points last year, 608 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Going over.
I'm going over as well as you can just put me down for over as the next guy, who's Dwayne Allen. We both talked about how we like both of the Colts tight ends, and he only had 8 points last year, so I think he might be able to eclipse that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think both of those tight ends are going to have good seasons, assuming they stay healthy.
Yeah. And then we'll close out the entire segment with Mercedes Lewis down in Jacksonville, who averaged 5.26 per game over 11 games. He had 4 touchdowns and 400 yards, or 360 yards.
I'm going to go under.
Yeah, so am I.
He does nothing for me.
Yeah, he's kind of a blah guy, and we talked about the receivers, and there's that means less passes to go around. So
yeah. By the way, he's never gotten more than 700 yards receiving in a season.
That is less than impressive.
and that was the same season he got 10 touchdowns. His next highest is 4 in a season. So unless he's duplicating that 10, he just does nothing for me. He had that one good year, and
there's just better options.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's move on quickly. We'll just run through the next segment real quick. Robot Bill, why don't you help us out here?
Primetime Fantasy Football presents Dig It or Ditch It.
Can you dig it?
Thank you, Robot Bill. And dig it or ditch it. Starting it off, we'll basically just tell you what's up and then tell you if we're digging it or ditching it, which is basically buy or sell, but we don't like to use that. Gronkowski, all signs pointing to him starting in week number 1. Steve, you digging it or you ditching it?
I'll dig it, just because I like to watch Gronk spike football. I just want to watch him play. So any positive Gronk news is good news for me.
Yeah, you know what? Everything from last year is telling me to ditch it, but I'm gonna dig it as well. If it's this early and they're saying he's gonna start week 1, that's a good sign. Last year they were still up in the air, so I'm gonna agree with that. Next up, you have RG3 saying, I'm trying to remember who it was now, saying he was looking as good as he did in 2012 when he had that really good rookie season.
I'm gonna ditch this as far as I can possibly ditch it.
Sean McVay, by the way, said that.
Sorry, Sean. He's gonna have to show me something. He just is. It wasn't just the ACL. He had happy feet in the pocket last year. Yeah, that's not what a good quarterback does. So.
Yeah, I'm ditching it as well. Next up, Bryce Brown, the Buffalo Bills' possible future running back.
Maybe. No, I'll dig it. I mean,
I'm Ron Burgundy.
I'm Ron Burgundy. I don't see why not. They always seem to shuffle running backs in and out, so that position seems to be wide open. I talked about last week how much C.J. Spiller doesn't do it for me. So I could see Bryce Brown. He impressed with the Eagles when he got the chance. So
yeah, and you know what? He is the only running back that has his contract signed through 2015. The other 2 guys are free agents after this year. So maybe Bryce Brown doesn't get you numbers this year, but if you're in a dynasty league, he might be a guy to look at because next year he's only 23, maybe 24. Next year he could be the guy, and all of a sudden you find yourself with that, after getting him really late this year. So something to think about.
Yeah,
I'm digging it, by the way.
Yeah, right. I'm not good at math, but he was born in 1991, which is not only ridiculous that he's in the NFL and born in 1991, but means he's also young. So yeah, I could definitely see him being a future running back.
All right, and then I think you had a couple, right?
Yeah, I do have a couple. We have Dennis Pitta showing that he can live in a more versatile role, as in not only tight end, but line up in the slot as a wide receiver. And they even have him out wide a little bit as a wide receiver in Baltimore. So they're high on his athletic ability.
I guess I can dig that. I'll dig the Pitta.
Yeah, I could dig it for sure. I mean, they're definitely looking for some more pass-catching options. So,
Flacco needs them.
Yeah, he could definitely fill one of those roles, and without a doubt for me. I'll stick with the tight end position and Kyle Rudolph. People are loving Kyle Rudolph right now, not only because North Turner is his new offensive coordinator, where he had Jordan Cameron as his tight end for last year, and also North Turner loves to throw it. But there's also rumors of Kyle Rudolph being at these wide receiver camps, and he's working hard, and he's lost a bunch of weight, and it's all muscle weight. So people are loving Kyle Rudolph in the offseason and like him to emerge this year as a tight end.
I'm going to go ahead and ditch it.
Okay.
Yeah, he just doesn't do much for me. He had a good year in 2012, a real down year last year. So, I mean, I know he only played half the season, but he's one of those guys who has to show me something. So I'm going to ditch it first.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and dig that as a
dig away, dig your own grave.
as a Kyle Rudolph fan, but also as a not impressed with the rest of the Minnesota Vikings fan.
That's true.
And I mean, there is the sense of a quarterback needing to throw it to him, but I can trust in Matt Castle enough to get Kyle Rudolph the ball if people are talking about him like they are. So I'm excited about him a little bit, actually. I wouldn't take him too high, but I think he might be a possible sleeper when we cover the NFC North. So I would be excited about that. My next one, we have Joik Bell feeling 100% down in Detroit, coming off an injury. But people are he's telling people that he's back to 100%.
I'll ditch that until a doctor tells me that he's back at 100%.
You and me both. For whatever reason, Detroit running backs make me nervous. So Joik Bell, he falls under that category. He's good when he's healthy, but yeah, Reggie Bush. And they had a guy with the concussion problems. I can't think of his name right now, but he was fantastic, and then he ran into concussion problems. And he kind of just fell off the mat.
No, it wasn't Falk.
I can't think of it.
No,
we'll find it.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah, and then closing out the segment before we run into our next segment is people are talking about MJD down in Oakland with Darren McFadden, and they're saying they're going to run it so much in Oakland that he's going to get plenty of carries and plenty of touches, and he's going to go ahead and be back to the MJD of old, essentially, is what they're saying. So, you digging that or ditching it?
No, that has all signs point to ditching.
Yeah, for sure. This is a big time ditch. I'm not excited about. They run it a lot, but they don't run it well.
Yeah, you can run it all you want, but if you're not good at it.
Yeah, and they might fall themselves behind a lot, which doesn't help the running. And I actually read something that's they're playing a lot of stout run defenses this year, so it could be struggle in Oakland this year, and especially for Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yeah, they could give up on the run pretty quickly if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
All right, so that does it for Dig It or Ditch It. I actually like that segment. That's a new favorite of mine. Maybe next time we'll have more time to kind of talk about it a little more.
Yeah, I talked too much about who I was excited about with the over-under.
Over-under does take a while. We'll have to find a way to shorten that up a little bit. Maybe just highlight a few guys that we don't talk about in Sleeper Spotlight maybe or something.
Yeah.
All right, so you wanna bring us into this? We'll real quick go through this article that you had mentioned.
Yeah, we ran the runaround on Robot Bill, so I think we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this next segment, and we'll call it What the Experts Are Saying. Maybe we'll have a fancy graphic or a fancy lead-in next time we do the segment, if we do it again. But there was
Robot
Matthew
Bill
Berry.
says no.
Okay, well, see you later, Robot Bill.
You're fired.
Matthew Berry wrote an article. It was on the 30th, but it was close enough to this week that we're going to call it relevant. He wrote an article called 100 Fantasy Football Facts. So I thought we would pick we would each pick 3 facts that we agree with and 3 facts that we don't agree with heading into the fantasy season, just things to look out for as you head into your draft and people to watch. So you want to kick it off?
Yeah.
What do you agree with?
My first one that I agree with is that during the first 5 weeks of the past season, which is the only time Julio Jones and Roddy White were on the field together, Matt Ryan was the 6th highest fantasy point quarterback. I can totally agree with that, and if they're both healthy this year, I think he's going to have a great bounce back year.
I think that's completely possible, and I would agree. It always helps to have 2 stud wide receivers on the outside as a quarterback.
Exactly.
So I molded my first degree was his 3 facts into one, but it creates a sentence.
Yeah, his article, the 100 Facts article at least, and we're by no means, I think we both can say we read his stuff and think he's a very well-spoken guy.
Sure.
The articles, it's more, it's pretty fun actually to read because it's 100 facts, but it's not written like drawn out like. Facts 3 through 5 in this case all have to do with the same thing generally.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a real quick read. It probably wouldn't take you more than 5-10 minutes.
No, I always skip the first 7 paragraphs when he tells a story or something. I just go right to the facts.
Yeah, I do that too. So yeah, like Adam mentioned, this is facts 3 through 5, and I'll just read it through. So last year, the Patriots wide receivers were tackled at the 1-yard line 8 times, which was 3 more than any other team. And if you regress that to the league average, which was 3.3. Tom Brady would have had 4 additional touchdown passes and have finished the 8th best fantasy quarterback. The last part of that sentence is what I'm agreeing with, is Tom Brady is at least the 8th best fantasy quarterback. And we were we were looking for reasons why he didn't have as many points last week when we did the AFC East, and this could be it. We might have found our answer.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we kind of touched on it last week, and again, if you missed last week's podcast, it's on iTunes and the nextlevelradioonline.com website. We touched on that last week that we both think he's going over his points last year, and he's a better quarterback than last year would lead you to believe. But the next one I agree with. Last year, 79% of Knowshon Moreno's runs came with 6 or fewer men in the box, and basically that's just telling me product of Peyton Manning as your quarterback.
Absolutely.
We've already talked again last week about us being low on Knowshon Moreno, plus his surgery, plus apparently Lamar Miller's looking better. So yeah.
We just love finding reasons to trash Knowshon Moreno. So
yeah,
it's just one more. So you're welcome, Knowshon.
And he cries.
So my second agree is prior to getting injured in Week 7 against Washington, Jay Cutler was tied for 6th in total fantasy points among quarterbacks, which I'm into. I like Jay Cutler. Again, you talked about Matt Ryan being a good quarterback when Julio Jones and Roddy White are available. I think there's that Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, those beasts on the outside, are even better as a wide receiver tandem, which directly correlates to Jay Cutler being a good fantasy quarterback. So yeah, I'm buying Jay Cutler as long as he can stay healthy, being a really good option at quarterback this year.
Yeah, that's the question, is the health. I mean, I actually had him on my team last year in one of my leagues. He was on my team with Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson doesn't always put up a ton of points. He does have some really good games, but I actually started Cutler over Wilson a few times, and it paid off. So that tells you what you need to know right there.
I agree.
My next fact that I agree with, Knowshon Moreno has cried so much it could fill a gallon jug of water. No, sorry.
I couldn't say that.
With Emmanuel Sanders not playing for the Broncos and Jericho Cotchery now playing for the Broncos and Jericho Cotchery now playing for the Panthers, the remaining Steelers with the most receiving touchdowns after Antonio Brown last year are Heath Miller, Matt Spieth, Will Johnson, and Derek Moyer. Or is it? It might be Moy.
It's Moy. That's
okay. But I thought I accidentally deleted the R. Okay, so Derek Moy. They each had 1, by the way. So that tells you that Antonio Brown, if he wasn't the guy before, he's the guy now.
Yeah, he was fantastic last year. I won a championship with him as one of my receivers last year. He was a more than pleasant surprise, and the fact that you thought Derek Moy was Derek Moyer tells you all you need to know about the rest of the Steelers receiving corps. So
that's 100% correct.
My last agree with it is Broncos running backs combined for 18 touchdowns in the 2013 regular season. That included 14 rushing touchdowns inside the opponent's 10-yard line. Good for second in the NFL. And although this doesn't mention a name, I'm going to go ahead and mention Monty Ball at this point. Yeah, he's due to have a Knowshon Moreno type year. If Peyton Manning's proven anything, he's proven that he makes people good. So it's Monty Ball's turn, and I think Monty Ball has a lot of potential to have a really good year, and this is just solidifying that.
Yeah, they gave him some chances last year, and he didn't do much with them, so I'm hoping he can turn that around and actually do something with the chance now that Moreno's out of there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if he can fix his issues from last year, definitely going to have a good season, for sure.
Heard that.
All right, let's move on to what we disagree with. First one for me. In 2014, Scott Linehan will call plays for Tony Romo, who is currently being drafted outside the top 10 at QB. Now, there were a few facts before this about Scott Linehan quarterbacks. I believe it was Dante Culpepper. The seasons that he was, I think, the coordinator for Culpepper. He was like, I don't know, they had a ton of fantasy points or something like that.
I want to say Stafford as well.
And then Stafford was, the other one. So basically this is just saying Tony Romo's going to have a really great year because of Linehan. And Tony Romo's being drafted outside the top 10 at QB. I'm still not that high on Tony Romo, especially coming off the back surgery. I think outside the top 10 is about where he belongs, maybe at like 11 or 12.
I hear you on that one, and I actually agree with the disagree. So I don't have any problem with you saying that.
Damn right.
My first disagree has to do with Kelvin Benjamin, who had 8 touchdown receptions of 15 or more yards, which tied for the most of any player from an automatic qualifying conference. The key stat, or the key part of this sentence is from an automatic qualifying conference, meaning last year Kelvin Benjamin played in college. So I'm not sure. I mean, I get it, the guy's got speed, and he's a deep threat, but I'm just not overexcited. And what Barry got into was Cam Newton to throw the ball deep. Obviously, Kelvin Benjamin is in Carolina now. I'm just not. I mean, you're going to have to prove that he can translate from the NCAA to the NFL before you want me to get real excited about a guy catching a ton of passes downfield and being a deep threat.
Yeah, get back to me in like 2 years.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Next one I have is up a little bit on my page. Let me scroll up. Jones. Marvin Jones, I believe they were talking about. I probably should have added that on there. Was the only player in the league with the perfect catch percentage on end zone throws, minimum of 5. I believe he was 9 for 9. AJ Green was 7 for 23. Doesn't matter. AJ Green's still the guy there. He's still an absolute beast wide receiver, in my opinion. Marvin Jones is good, but I don't think he's gonna do. I don't think he takes a huge step up over what he did last year. I mean, 9 for 9's good, but do you really think he's gonna have 9 touchdowns and he's gonna go 9 for 9 again? I don't know that I do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, didn't he have like 4 touchdowns in one game? And then he didn't do too much other than that for the rest of the year. I mean,
obviously 5 the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's reason to be excited, but there's not too much reason to be excited there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a young guy, so he's got potential, but I don't know if I'd get carried away. Yeah. And yeah, he did have 4 in against the Jets.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So,
and by the way, that was the only game he had over 100 receiving yards.
Yeah, we call that consistency.
And he did not have more than 1 touchdown in any other game the rest of the year.
Yeah.
This is just supporting why I disagree.
Yeah, you're doing a great job over there. And being not consistent can definitely be frustrating. So.
Yeah.
My next disagree fact is number 69, which I'm hoping that's not the only reason I picked this fact. I'll see when I read it. Meanwhile, there was only one running back with at least 15 red zone opportunities convert at least 1/3 of them for touchdowns, and that was Donald Brown. He was 6 for 18. So, yeah, this is mentioning this is high on Donald Brown. I'm just not overly excited about Donald Brown. I think that he was fine with the Colts, but now with the Chargers, I actually believe in Ryan Matthews, believe it or not, and they even let me host my own podcast show, and I still believe in Ryan Matthews as a running back.
You haven't been fired yet, so yeah.
Yeah, but I like Matthews and especially Danny Woodhead. I see Donald Brown as 3rd on the depth chart. So, despite the fact that he converted 1 out of 3 chances in the red zone, I just don't know that he's going to get that many this year.
Yeah, I actually agree with you as far as not being high on Donald Brown, because I think even there's talk that they're pretty high on Matthews still over in San Diego. And I mean, last year it was the first time with their new head coach, and he decided that Matthews had a good year last year. So why would that change? I mean, it's coach's choice.
I agree.
The last disagree I have, if you scored Cam Newton, by the way, final season within ESPN standard fantasy points, he would have averaged 35.8 per game. By the way, final season, they're talking about his final season in college. And Johnny Manziel would have averaged 37.2. Again, this kind of goes back to the whole Kelvin Benjamin thing. That's college. You got to show me that you can do it on the professional level. And I do think Johnny Manziel actually will have a pretty decent fantasy year just because of his legs. But
sure,
you're not going to go out there and tell me he's going to do as well as Cam Newton. He could, by all means, but I don't think there's any guarantee to that just because their last season in college, they would have had a lot of fantasy points. That's college.
Yeah, and I mean, I could see Johnny Manziel having a good year. Like you said, he's a good running quarterback, and he's probably got the best coach in the NFL, and Mike Pettin. And I only say that because he coached my high school football team for a while. But yeah, I could see Johnny Manziel being a decent fantasy option. It's just I can't find comparison of NCAA to when he's playing in the Big 12. and then comparing it to the NFC North,
Yep.
or the AFC North.
South?
So,
Or no,
yeah.
North. Yeah, sorry. I was still thinking AFC South spotlight.
And yeah, we'll close it out with my fact. Again, I combined three, but I'll just read it as one sentence. An ESPN Stats and Information study of running back fantasy production from 2001 to 2013 over a presumed 5-year length of a rookie contract and using a minimum of 100 rushes to qualify. Stick with me here.
This is confusing.
Shows that on average, this is the important part. On average, the most productive season for a rookie is for a player is the 3rd year of their rookie contract. 3rd-year running backs averaged 150 fantasy points, most of any of the current contract years. And then now it mentions that Alfred Morris, Doug Martin, Trent Richardson, and Lamar Miller are all among notable 3rd-year backs this season. I'm disagreeing with this mainly because of Alfred Morris, Doug Martin. Doug Martin had a great rookie year, had a terrible 2nd year. We talked a little bit about Alfred Morris, how he isn't impressing, and this new offensive coordinator likes to throw it. I do believe in Lamar Miller, and then Trent Richardson's yard per carry is under 3.
It's
so
atrocious,
we've been talking about the AFC. Yeah, we've been talking about the AFC South. He's a good running back, but his yards per carry isn't all that impressive. So a lot of these guys are in show-me years, and I'm just not going to blindly go ahead and say they're going to have a good year because they're in their 3rd year of their rookie contract.
Yeah, you know what? There's a reason it's called the average, is because some guys are going to do really well and there's going to be guys that don't do well. So I would say maybe half of these guys will have a pretty good year. Alfred Morris will probably go down a little. Doug Martin, I think, might have a bounce-back year. Maybe not as good as his rookie contract, but better than last year, obviously. Trent Richardson, I would think, would go up a little bit, and maybe even Lamar Miller, too, with with what they're doing down there. So, yeah, it could easily go either way. I don't think I don't think that stat is telling me that I need to have all 4 of those guys on my team, or any of those 4 for that matter.
Exactly. This isn't one that's going to sway me either way. I'm going to go ahead and evaluate them as a regular running back, not as a 3rd-year running back.
Yeah, I am on board with that. So, all right, well, cool. That wraps up episode number 3 for Primetime Fantasy Football, the AFC South. Next week. Sorry, we're not taking that big of a break. Next week, do you want to switch it over to the NFC maybe? Do like NFC North?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's cover them all.
Yeah, let's get out of the AFC. Let's take a break from the AFC. We'll do NFC North next week. Like I said, we did AFC East last week, and AFC South tonight. So, again, make sure you go on to nextlevelradioonline.com. Check out all our other shows and everything like that, and podcasts. You can stream everything if you don't have iTunes. But if you do have iTunes, go on to iTunes, search for Next Level Radio, subscribe to that because you'll get some great guest spotlights, celebrity guest spotlights. We had a couple this week, including Tony Dennison from Major Crimes, and then Morris Levy from producer of the new film Affluenza. You can also go on there and check out the past shows of the showcast with myself and Ben Beck, which is every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you listen to, I don't know if he's doing it this week, but Ben has a All Request Radio Rock every Thursday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time to 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So make sure you check that out. Again, I don't know if he's doing it this week, but yeah, tune in anyway and find out. But like I said, I don't know if I know I said go on to Next Level Radio Online to subscribe to Next Level Radio on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to Primetime Fantasy Football on iTunes as well. That's us. So make sure you'll never miss an episode. And give us a rating too. If it's a good one, give us a good rating so we can get on iTunes New and Noteworthy and get some more listeners. But send us your questions, primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. Again, we said if you have some maybe keeper questions, you're in a keeper league or something like that, and you're not sure who to keep, send it to us. We'll let you know. You can also send us your information and sign up for our fantasy football league as well. That's free, and like we said before, the winner of that will get their pick of where in the draft order they get to pick next season. Steve, you got anything else?
Nope, just the same stuff as there usually is with my blog. Go ahead and head over to StephenRichards.net. Again, as Adam mentioned, it's linked up on the Next Level Online as well.
NextLevelRadioOnline.com.
Next Level Radio Online .com, and my bio's on there. And then feel free to give me a follow on Twitter. That could be another way to ask questions and things like that. I can catalog them for sure. My Twitter handle is srichards31. Feel free to give me a follow and shoot me a question on there as well, and I would have no problem cataloging it and answering it and giving you a tweet shout out as the person who asked the question, and that could be a way to incorporate our audience as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then I'm at Adam Next Level. Next Level Radio is at NXT Level Radio. Tweet us your questions, and then we'll definitely answer them next week. And I think that's it. There's one more thing. I'm drawing a blank. Whatever. Just make sure you listen to us every Wednesday live here on Next Level Radio, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Listen to All Request Radio Rock, 7 to 10 p.m. every Thursday, also Eastern Time, and then the showcast Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That does it for Steve Richards. I'm Adam Gorey. We will see you next week when we do the NFC North.
See you then.
Control